What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, we all have that friend, right? That will forever hold a grudge. You can have something happen, it doesn't even matter what it is, just something they got mad about. 10 years later down the road, they'll kind of admonish you for doing whatever you did, right? They're just like, come on, man, you're still bringing that up? Let it go for Christ's sake. It's like, geez, come on, y'all. But check this out. This is the situation we are currently in right now with Kamala Harris. They are still trying to blame Joe Biden for this, for her loss. As a matter of fact, check this out, y'all. Exclusive. How no daylight from Biden crippled the Harris campaign. Oh my goodness. Here we go. Some more excuses. Some more of pointing the finger at somebody as to why she lost. Check this out. Excerpt from Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House by Jonathan Allen and Amy Parnas. To be published April 1st by William Morrow. Copyright blah, 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 blah. You get it. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris both understood the importance of being seen as the bigger change agent. For Trump, that meant continuing to promise an antidote to the Biden-Harris years. For Harris, there was more flexibility to define her brand of change. She could risk looking hypocritical by making clean breaks with Biden on policies she had supported as vice president, rejecting parts of their record to forge her own agenda. She could identify new issues to run on that avoided the pitfalls of turning her back on the Biden era. Or she could rely on voters to see her gender, her genes, and her lived experience, a middle-class upbringing, schools outside the Ivy League, and a career as a prosecutor as symbols of change. Biden and his loyalists took the first option off the table. What I find so fascinating about this, right, is all this pointing the finger stuff at Biden and all that blah, blah, blah nonsense. And, the media, the leftist media constantly saying she needs to distance herself from Biden is an utter admittance that Joe Biden was a failed president, that his policies damaged this country, that Joe Biden was destroying this country, as I said for a year and a half when I started this channel. That they just admit that outright, not directly, but indirectly, by saying that she needs to distance herself from Biden. Why would you need to do that? If Joe Biden is this awesome president, best president of our lifetimes, according to the left, if he has all these accomplishments, he's done so much good, he's been so good that he's the best. He's better than George Washington, according to them. Why would Kamala Harris need to distance herself from all of this? This is the question that I have for all of these people, right? Why are they coming out with a book saying, Joe Biden telling Kamala Harris, hey, there needs to be no daylight between you and I? That's what they're saying here. Why is that a bad thing? Why did that sack her campaign, her presidential campaign, if he is so good? Serious question for the comment section, y'all. Like, these people just like they can't see their own fallacies, I guess you could call it a fallacy, because they just getting out there and trying to make up all these excuses. They're exposing themselves as hypocrites, right? Like, because why would you want to distance yourself from Biden if he's so good? Why would you need to separate yourself? Make your own path. Blaze your own trail, for crying out loud. Why not, if Biden is so good, why not tout Biden's economic achievements, right? Why not tout Biden's foreign policy achievements? Why not tout everything about Biden? All of his legislative accomplishments. He's not a legislator. That's what I would say to that, but that is what it is. The president is definitely not a legislator, but let's keep going and see what else they have to say. He would say publicly that Harris should do what she must to win, but privately, including in conversations with her, he repeated an admonition. Let there be no daylight between us. No daylight was the phrase he had used as a vice presidential candidate in 2008 to bind Republican nominee John McCain to an unpopular president, George W. Bush. Almost everywhere she went, Harris walked among former Biden aides who sought to defend his presidency. Her campaign was run by a former White House deputy chief of staff, whom she had just empowered to box out her own confidants, and a phalanx of department heads who had served Biden until the previous month. The day before Harris's first interview, a joint appearance with vice presidential nominee Tim Walz, she dived into the recurring question of whether and when she would let daylight shine between herself and Biden. Veteran Democratic communications strategist Stephanie Cutter launched into a proposed preamble a list of all the items that made Harris proud of her work with Biden. Wait, said Sean Clegg, a longtime Harris advisor who was regarded with suspicion by the Biden holdovers running the campaign. Let's not do this. Let's not go down memory lane. You gotta love this just utter open admittance that Joe Biden was a failed president. Gotta love that. That's going to be the theme of this entire video, by the way. That was the last time he was invited to media prep. Cutter, another Harris confidant, later joked, "Cut him out. Yeah, we can't have anybody trying to distance Harris from Biden. These people are insane as a matter of fact at this point." When Harris sat down with Walz in CNN's Dana Bash the last week of August, the segment produced a little bit of news. Harris said she would name a Republican to serve in her cabinet. She also said that she no longer supported a ban on fracking. Her 2019 call to end the practice threatened to hurt her in Pennsylvania, even though she had adopted Biden's no-ban policy as his vice presidential candidate in 2020. But the first portion of the one-on-two interview, the part more viewers were likely to watch, featured Harris reciting a laundry list of Biden policies. That is right. And, it wasn't... I wish these people would actually sit back for a second, step outside of your little echo chamber, and look at Kamala Harris's interviews, just look at her public speeches, and listen to what she actually says. Because these people, they were trying to put up what is essentially a blank slate of a person. And what I mean by that is she doesn't know what she even stands for. Right? She doesn't know how to speak. She doesn't have any policy positions. All she does is repeat stuff she hears from the far left. That's why she's like, ban fracking, because the climate zealots want to ban fracking. This is why she was advocating for transgender surgeries for prisoners, for crying out loud, because the far left advocates for this kind of stuff. This is why she was advocating for free health care for criminal aliens, because this is what the far... It's nuts. She's a blank slate, right? But none of these people will actually sit back and look at what she says. She was the worst possible candidate that they could have put up, I think, in my opinion. They would have been better off putting Pete Buttigieg as presidential candidate, right? Because she just could not talk. She could not speak. Joe Biden, that was the biggest mistake of his life. That was the biggest mistake as far as politics, in my opinion, is picking her to be vice president and actually thinking that she could be president. She was any sort of presidential candidate. Sitting next to Walz in a chair that seemed to place her below him and heaping praise on Biden's record, Harris did not look like a candidate seeking the highest office in the land. The whole scene reinforced the criticism that the vice president was either incapable or afraid of answering tough questions on her own. For the rest of the campaign, her team required that she be provided a chair that met certain specifications: leg height no less than 15 inches, floor to top of seat height no less than 18.9 inches, arms on chairs may not be very high, arms must fall at a natural height, chairs must be firm. This is all ridiculous, if you ask me. No matter how firm her chair, the question facing Harris was whether she could build a sturdy platform, and the answer to that is obviously no. She could not inspire a duck to go and swim in a lake, for crying out loud. Her rallies and convention speeches had not answered the question of why she was running for president, or how her vision for the country would deliver for voters, because she couldn't say it, other than having been next in line. She was running out of major moments to explain a vision to a broad audience. Her September 10th debate with Trump would offer another opportunity, perhaps a last chance before voters cast early ballots, to establish that key part of her narrative. Yeah, but, honestly, she didn't have enough time to run a presidential campaign. But, on the other hand, people already knew who she was, right? If Joe Biden would not have kept her in the closet his entire presidency, then maybe that would have been a good candidate to run. Why did these people not just capitulate to RFK Jr.? Like, that's absurd. RFK had a lot of popularity, as a matter of fact. As an outsider, he tried to run, what's his name? Damn it. Dean Phillips. Dean Phillips was a congressman. He was a moderate, for crying out loud. He could have come in and swept all the Democratic voters off their feet, for crying out loud. I was actually worried about this guy. I paid attention to him a little bit in the primary process. It was absurd what they did to him. They sued him into oblivion to keep him off the ticket. And then they want to talk about democracy. Oh, Trump is a threat to democracy, but you guys over here are suing every candidate that tries to run against Biden, knowing that Biden is way too old for the job. That was absurd. I cannot take these people seriously. Democrats, that is. Cannot take them seriously when they get out there talking about democracy this and democracy that after the 2024 presidential election cycle. I cannot. These people have lost all credibility when it comes to democracy, because that was one of the most absurd presidential elections for the Democratic primaries in my life that I've ever seen. Suing all these candidates to keep them off the ballot. Suing RFK Jr. for crying out loud, who was polling at 20% during the primary process. Knowing that Biden's way too old, Biden would never win again. Kamala Harris is a dud, for crying out loud. They could have put RFK Jr., put everybody, the Democratic Party behind RFK Jr., and probably beat Donald Trump. We would not have Donald Trump right now. I can almost guarantee you of that. Almost guarantee you of that. RFK Jr. would have beaten Donald Trump. It would have been a really, really close race. A lot of these independents, these moderates, that they'll vote Democrat or Republican, depending on who they like the most, would have probably leaned toward RFK Jr. I'm not going to lie about that. Donald Trump would not have gotten the 77 million or whatever votes he got. I don't think that. I really think RFK Jr. would have had a really good chance at winning that. But these people can't see the forest for the freaking trees, and they want to put up a dud as a candidate and think that, listen to her speeches. But at the same time, these people, they put up President Joe Biden, knowing he was in mental decline, talking about in 2020. Knowing he's in mental decline, and that's going to be an issue 4 years later, and they allowed him to run again. It is absurd. And it took Chuck Schumer and a couple other Democrats, I forget their names. Nancy Pelosi was one of them. And then celebrity, what's his name? Can't think of his name. Who cares? Right? To come in and actually tell Biden that he's not going to run anymore. That's absurd, y'all. And then they just anoint Kamala Harris and put her up in the pole position or whatever. No, get your mind out of the gutter. Put her up in the position to be the presidential candidate, knowing that she's a dud. She can't speak. She has no speaking abilities, right? She can talk, sure. Anybody can talk. Look, I'm talking right now. But she says stuff with no substance behind it whatsoever. There's nothing behind the words she speaks at all. But the day of the debate, Biden called to give Harris an unusual kind of pep talk and another reminder about the loyalty he demanded. No longer able to defend his own record, he expected Harris to protect his legacy. That's starting to make Joe Biden sound like an authoritarian, isn't it? One of these totalitarian dictators that demands loyalty. Whether she won or lost the election, he thought she would only harm him by publicly distancing herself from him, especially during a debate that would be watched by millions of Americans. To the extent that she wanted to forge her own path, Biden had no interest in giving her room to do so. He needed just 3 words to convey how much all of that mattered to him. "No daylight, kid," Biden said. That is absurd, y'all. They are actually going off on Joe Biden on this. That's a scathing admittance that Joe Biden is a totalitarian dictator. Like, I've been saying that for a long time. He's an authoritarian. Look what he tried to do with all of his stinking mandates, right? The vaccine mandate, the electric vehicle mandate for federal government. Just all of his ridiculous mandates were absurd. The shutting down of voices on social media, having all of his departments have backdoor access to social media, and if you say anything out of line with the Democratic Party, oh, you get shadow banned, silenced, or banned outright, right? And put an injunction on him to get him to stop doing this, and they still do it anyway, right? There were so many things that he did. Texas creates a law, right, to help the federal government with criminal aliens, giving local police officers the ability to detain criminal aliens and turn them over to ICE for deportation. The Biden administration sued the Texas government to stop them from doing that. How absurd is that? Not to mention all the scuffle that went on over the razor wire stuff. The scuffle that went on over the National Guard and whatever park that was, I forget. It was just all absurd. You know, the student loan forgiveness. It's nonsense what went on with the Biden administration, right? The most authoritarian, dictatorial administration in American history. And these people, they're just now coming out and saying, oh, he was a dictator, y'all. He was an absolute dictator. He wouldn't even let Kamala Harris forge her own path. No daylight, kid. They're trying to blame it on him because he's getting old, he's getting senile, and he probably won't remember at all anymore, right? Like, where is Joe Biden, as a matter of fact? But, you know, it's just absurd. They're still pointing fingers at this point. And it's crazy. They're pointing them at Joe Biden, who's an authoritarian dictator. So this is all nuts, y'all. Still playing the blame game. Still holding a grudge against Donald Trump. But, you know, they fell on their own sword on this one, right? By putting up Kamala Harris and actually cutting off really good candidates. Seriously, Dean Phillips. Bastards. Seriously, Dean Phillips would have been a phenomenal candidate, y'all. Would have been one of the best presidential candidates we've seen from the Democrats in a good while, right? He was definitely a moderate. You know, I just find all this so freaking fascinating that they're sitting over here pointing all these fingers all over the damn place, and they don't realize that it's their own fault. They should be pointing them right back at themselves for tripping and stumbling over themselves all the way through that primary process. Right? It's just absurd what they did, trying to force Trump off the ballot because he's an insurrectionist. Although he's never been convicted of insurrection, he's never even been charged with any sort of crime that's anything close to an insurrection. Right? And they're trying to force the American people to believe that this alternate slate of electors that was put together by the states, that, oh, that's Trump's doing. No, it wasn't Trump's doing, as a matter of fact. You know, he was challenging the election. So if those challenges go through, if they're successful, in other words, then you're going to need new slates of electors. I'm sorry, that's just how that works. So they were preparing for that inevitability, or the possible inevitability, right? That possible outcome. They were preparing for that, putting slates of electors. And then they want to go after his lawyers, for crying out loud. They went after Trump's lawyers. That is absurd. Like, in what free country can you go after Trump, go after anybody's lawyers for giving them law advice? That's just nuts. I found that so absurd. Just so beyond the pale, if you ask me. just nuts. But I'm rambling at this point. I think I'm gonna cut it off here, y'all. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Do y'all not just find this one of the most fascinating articles that they're trying to blame Joe Biden on this? Oh, it's Joe Biden's fault because he's an authoritarian. That's just great, y'all. Y'all keep doing the same thing y'all have been doing. And we're going to sit right here and laugh our fool heads off at y'all. But y'all let me know what y'all think. That's all I got on this one. I want to thank everybody for watching. And y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.